Welcome to the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. Strike! The 80-20 Coaching Masterclass. Our weekly get-together where coaches go from new to good and good to great. Mastering the fundamentals and the art of coaching.
Welcome, baseball community, coaches, parents, players. Welcome to this week's get-together here. This is Coach Bo, pumped up as always to be here. We got part 2 of our interview with Coach Adam Sarancik today. Part 1 was last week, part 2 of 2 this week. In the discussion, we're talking about how the offseason can be make or break for coaches, even at the youth level. If you want to be great next season, how to spend time being a great coach and balance that with great family time, how to build a coaching staff that's truly on the same page. We also talk about why telling is not teaching, and a great way to demonstrate everything so players actually get better. We discuss technology, the pros and cons of technology in the game of baseball. We also talk about how to get the best strategies from other coaches in any sport by watching what happens off the ball, not just the highlight plays, so we dive into that. And we talk about a handful of other awesome coaching topics, baseball topics. This interview is impactful for coaches, players, parents. With that said, let's dive into part 2 of our interview with Coach Adam Sarancik. What are some good ways for coaches, youth coaches, to stay proficient with technology so they can connect with today's players?
Well, I'm going to combine this answer with the one about maybe one of the most important things that I think coaches need to do in the off season, and that's find ways of becoming a better coach. In other words, get more resources, trusted resources, reputable resources, not just what I call drill of the day. A lot of coaches during the season will go onto YouTube and find a hitting drill that they like and incorporate that. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, except that it becomes their staple for coaching as opposed to thinking about how we're going to rest the kids and all the ability spectrums on our team, right? In the off season, coaches should really read books, read articles, watch videos, listen to podcasts by the most respected coaches in coaching in multiple sports and in leadership. Okay, not just sports, but all of those things having to do with leadership too. Really continue to try to get better. I know even at 71 years old that I'm a much better coach today than I was 15 years ago, because every single day I'm listening to podcasts, reading books, reading articles, watching videos. And again, a lot of it is stuff that I know, but maybe I need to continue to think about. Sometimes it's stuff that I've done, but I need to do better in a different way. I'm constantly challenging myself to get better and to look for resources to help me get better, particularly my coaching methodology. And technology is a part of that. As you just alluded to, youth have grown up with devices in their hand. I know my grandchildren knew how to work a tablet or an iPad before they could walk, right? They were asking me at 4 years old, hey, Papa, from the backseat of the car, do we have Wi-Fi in this area? At 4 years old, okay? So you have to understand the generation that we're coaching nowadays. Technology is everything to them. If you're going to connect with them, you better find a way to use technology in your coaching, all right? It could be something as basic, something that I use almost every coaching session, the On-Form app. It's just a recording app that allows me to break their throwing, fielding, and hitting mechanics down frame by frame and go over it with them if they're visual learners. It can be analysis by paralysis, overload, especially to a young kid. But to these kids today, they kind of enjoy watching video of themselves throwing, fielding, and hitting a ball. And many times, this applies right up through college. I even have my college players say, I am doing what you asked me to do, it's just not working. And then I'll have a video of them, and then I'll show it to them, and they'll say, okay, maybe I'm not doing what you asked me to do. I'm thinking that I'm doing it, but it's not what's actually happening. You need to learn what the alternatives are, the Rapsodos, the Edgetronics, whatever. But for a youth coach, just get something basic. Again, I'm promoting here. It's the app that I use, but get an app where you can record these players on your iPad, on your phone or whatever, and show it to them, break it down for them, send them video, and you'll see things on these videos that you weren't able to see with the naked eye, and it'll increase your knowledge about how to teach the game and how to teach it in a better way to different players so that they can all start identifying with. But they'll really get excited about using technology, and especially if the technology measures results as you get older and you get into the Rapsodos and even at a younger age, using hit tracks. My 7-year-old won't even go to the hitting barn with me anymore unless the hit tracks machine is turned on. He has to know what his exit velo is and his distance is and all that kind of stuff. Oh, and then they get all upset if the hit track says not a single. I said, you hit a line drive, okay? Let's be happy with hard contact. Yeah, but it wasn't a single, I got out. Maybe it was or maybe it wasn't. We literally have fights about what track says is a good result or not. So that's one of the things that you got to be careful careful of with technology is they get too involved with the result and they don't have the patience for how the process needs to happen to achieve the result. As you and I preach all the time, Coach, be where your feet are today. Don't try to be a college player today. You're an 8th grader today. You're a 7th grader today. Just get better today. And then as the years go on, eventually you'll be that college player. Don't try to be Shohei Ohtani today. Quit measuring yourself to those players. It's great that you want to be good, but let's focus on the process of how to get there. So sometimes technology can be overused to the point where the players are only interested in the results, the metrics, and they stop being patient. Kids today are very impulsive. I call it the point and click generation. They want to swipe right, swipe left, click on the mouse, and have it happen. And that's not how baseball is. It's not how sports is. It's not how life is. It takes time. There's a process to it. So we got to be careful that we don't overuse it to where they're just only focusing on results. And then kids today, go ahead and try to take their cell phones away from them for a day or a week and see what happens to their personality. They get so reliant on having it in their hands and interacting with this device that on the field, they don't know how to think without it. Guess what? On the mound, you don't have your device to tell you what's right and what's wrong. You got to think it. You got to feel it. All right. When the changeup's not working, you don't have time to go get the iPad out and whatever technology you're using and figure out what exactly is going on. You have to feel that. It's the same thing with their emotions. Their emotions are tied to what's in the device. They don't know how to react to adversity on their own because it's all about, if I don't like it, I can switch off it. My device can switch at the snap of the fingers to a different program, a different video game, whatever. It's very impulsive, very quick, or whatever. Well, guess what? That's not how sports is. Okay. You got to learn how to deal with your emotions. You got to be able to keep your calm. You got to be able to work through adversity. You can't rely on a device to do that. So we can definitely overuse technology, and we can forget that kids need to learn how to speak for themselves, how to be self-advocates, how to support it. These are all interpersonal skills that kids today are not as proficient at as they could be, or maybe were in the past when we didn't have devices that dominated our time and our attention the way that they do today.
At a minimum, have a base level knowledge of the technology that's being used by players. Have a base level at a minimum, youth coaches, even if you're not using them. I think it's important. And the reason why is because a lot of players are going to places that have a Hit Tracks or Rapsodo. You can understand when they come back from their hitting coach and they're discussing X, Y, or Z, at least you can be on the same page. Doesn't mean you need to use it or incorporate it at any of your practices, but having a base level knowledge of blast motion, maybe the top 5 things that the players are using these days. And I think as a coach, maybe at a minimum, like you said, use video analysis. That might be something at a base level. The Hit Tracks flaw that you mentioned is interesting. Not really a flaw, but it's the Hit Tracks tells your grandson that he got a single or a double. What I would want on there is a point, a 0 to 100 points. If you hit a line drive right up the middle off the center field wall, like a hard, that's 100. And then if you hit the gaps, line drives in the gaps, that's a 98. So there should be like a score because it's scoring the process. Because if the outfielder makes a diving catch on a ball in the gap, that's still 100. To me, that would be like an A+ hit. Like you smoked the ball to the gap, opposite field, Miguel Cabrera style, and the guy just dove and caught it. I actually just finished building an app yesterday, iOS app. It's the second one I got. The other one I have is called Pitcher Score, Pitcher Accuracy Score, and this one is going to be called Hitter Score. And what they do is they are a way for coaches and parents to score the process of hitting. The hitting score has 4 things it grades on. Did you take a breath? Were you on time for the pitch? Did you swing at a good pitch? And did you have the right swing intensity? Did you overswing? Did you underswing? Did you swing, with the proper swing intensity? So it actually tracks the 4 things that are under the control of the hitter in terms of the process. If you get those 4 things right, you are going to put yourself in a good situation. So I love what you're saying about using tech, but don't get caught up in the result. Don't chase the result that technology likes to give us. So what are some good ways to talked about building connections, understanding some base level technology, verbiage and wording, so you can have those connections with players on that, be on the same page. Why is building connections with players, returning and new players, so important in the offseason? And what are some practical ways to connect with players outside of the field to better understand who they are as a person, their personalities and challenges?
I think it's important to always look at the player and athlete and first see the person, okay? And I don't know at the youth level how practical this is. You may be able to go watch them play other sports. This really applies to the coach that is coaching maybe at the highest level in a division and may have the opportunity to coach the same player or players for more than 1 year, okay? So you coached them this first year and now they're still in your division and now you're going to coach them the second year or whatever. You may go watch them in other sports, have them know that you're supporting them in other sports and see how they react in those sports. Are they more of a leader in football than they are in baseball? Maybe able to say, how do I get that out of them on the baseball team? They're not the same. They don't have the same leadership ability and drive in baseball that they do in basketball or football or whatever. At a minimum, I would call their other coaches and say, when you coach this player in your sport or in previous seasons, what are their strengths? What are their challenges? How do they react when their teammates don't perform well or they don't perform well for their team? How do you get them to bounce back and handle adversity? Just have a conversation with their other coaches, maybe other coaches during that year when they're leading up to playing for you, or maybe it's between seasons when they played for you 1 year and now they're going to play for you again. But talking to other coaches can really be an effective way of learning something about those people. I think a general conversation with parents can be very helpful. So how does he react in school when, say, a test doesn't go so well and he doesn't do well in school? How does he react and how do you get him to rebound from that and to say, I'm going to work harder to do better. I think parents appreciate the fact that you're trying to get to know their kid so that you can help them use sports as a vehicle to be better in all areas of their life. The more you can connect with the person, because players learn differently, they're motivated differently, they react to adversity differently. All of these things are important because your standard for your excellence in your culture may be the same year and year, but the personality of your players is different every year. The character of your team is different. I listened to Lou Piniella 10, 20 years ago, probably 20 years ago now, on an interview. And he said, one of the most important things I've learned as a young coach, my standards are going to be the same, okay, for all of my teams. But I'm going to have to adapt to a new team every year. So the players need to adapt to the standards of the coach, and the coach needs to adapt to the personalities and individual characters of all of their players. And that changes every year. So yeah, it's very important for those reasons. And as a youth coach, I'd say at a minimum, I would try to connect with their other coaches, connect with their parents to try to just get to know them a little bit better. But just in conversations too, don't forget day in and day out when you're playing catch, because you should be involved in the throwing and receiving progression. I'm a partner with a different player every day. And sometimes the best form of conversation is a game of catch. And so you're talking about school, you're talking about what their favorite subjects are, talking about things they do well in, things that they struggle in, how they handle adversity in school, how you can relate that to handling adversity in baseball. So you're always trying to get to know them as a person and figure out how you can support them, how you can mentor them to be better for themselves and for their teammates.
That Pinella quote you mentioned, that's very interesting. Players need to adapt and adjust to the expectations of the team, but as coaches, we need to be able to adapt to each kid's personality. And I really like what you said about asking other coaches of the players or off-season coaches or coaches from other sports that have had that player, especially if they're having success or it looks like they're having a lot of success with that player. Ask them, hey, what's a couple things that you really do with that player that really you think would help? Or what's your approach with that player that's led you to have success coaching them? I also like a follow-up questionnaire. We just finished the season. A lot of teams just finished the season. How about a follow-up questionnaire to the parents and the players, 2 separate questionnaires? What did you appreciate most that I did as a coach? What are some things you would have liked to have seen me do? And was there something I could have done to connect better with you that I didn't do? That's always a good this time of year to send that. It's never too late, even if it's been a month. So we've talked a lot, Coach, about the mental side. We talked technology. We've talked about the person. What about the athlete? What does a strong off-season plan, in your opinion, look like for developing players as athletes, strength, speed, agility, and things like that? And how do you recommend coaches use the extra time in the off-season to help players work on their individual baseball skills? Is it different from the in-season or not?
The point I would make first is that athleticism development is so important, and just participating in other sports can be a lot of fun. And if that's why you're doing the other sport, you only live once, by all means do it. There's a lot of advantages to participating in other sports proprioceptively, as well as just learning different coaching styles, learning how to compete in other sports, et cetera, et cetera. But many times, and I don't want to generalize to say always, but many times you're not getting as much athleticism development just being on other teams and other sports as you think you are. So if your goal is to be the best baseball player that you can be, the answer is not playing fall ball. The answer is not playing 100 baseball games year round. And the answer may not even be playing other sports year round, because unfortunately today, the reality is if you're going to play on the best teams with the best players against the best competition with the best coaching, they're going to require you playing that sport year round. Okay, it's not going to be just in season. So it's going to quickly get your life out of balance. Okay, it's not going to allow you to be involved in other things outside of sports. If you want to be the best baseball player you're going to be, the best athlete you're going to be, you're going to have to devote 4 months out of the year minimum to training to be a better athlete. And we should be training athletes within our sports, but unfortunately we don't. We don't have a section of our practice for not just dynamic movement and stretching and stuff, but that isn't progressed. They're giving the athletes a routine to do at the beginning of the year, and that routine never changes. It never progresses. And it doesn't progress year to year. Leagues should progress that year to year. So in the offseason, the point is encourage the player to find a trainer to train them to be bigger, stronger, faster, quicker, and spend part of their day, or so many times a week, 3-4 times a week, getting to be a better athlete. If you have the opportunity to do that yourself, that's another podcast at another time about the proper way to do that. When it comes to the baseball aspects of things, the first thing that a youth coach needs to encourage all the players is baseball is not like basketball or soccer. You don't just roll out a ball and start dribbling it and shooting it, or like dribbling it and kicking it in soccer. You've got to get your body, your arm in shape to throw a baseball. Throwing a baseball is one of the most stressful activities you can place on the human body. And you've got to onboard it, as we say in baseball. You've got to onboard it very gradually and thoughtfully with getting your body strong, getting your shoulders and rotator cuffs ready to throw a baseball. You definitely have to have a program to do that. And then as far as the individual skills, definitely have a lot more time to work with them and progress them in all their throwing, fielding, and hitting fundamentals if you can work with them once or twice a week. And that's going to be much more beneficial than playing fall ball. Again, fall ball is fun. If that's what you're in sports for, just to have fun, go and do it by all means. But if you really want to get better, take those same days you do fall ball and use them to be a better athlete. Get with knowledgeable coaches that can help you throw, field, and hit a baseball better, and really develop your individual skills. Because what's happening, as you know, coach, nowadays is they're just playing games year round, fall ball games, tournament games, league games. We're playing games. Games don't improve your throwing, fielding, and hitting. They expose what your training has been for throwing, fielding, and hitting. There's a lot of advantages to playing games. I'm not saying there's not, but it doesn't help you throw, field, and hit a baseball better. So the more games you play at the sacrifice of developing your individual skills, you're not getting better. Matter of fact, you could be getting worse. If you're doing things incorrectly in games, throwing, fielding, and hitting, pitching, doing them over and over and over again in your pregame warm-ups and in the game, you're actually getting worse because you're reinforcing bad habits. So you're going to have to stop playing so many games and start doing things with qualified people to become a better athlete, and working with people who will help you develop your individual skills to a much greater and detailed way off season than you are during the season if you want to be the best baseball player you can be.
I was talking to a parent this morning, and the concern was they're swinging the bat really slow and not being able to catch up with the pitch. And they were saying it's because they don't see enough pitching and timing's off because their timing trigger is not there. They don't have a pitching delivery to trigger that timing. And I said, hey, that might be it. I wasn't looking at video. I said, but it also could be a strength thing. If the kid's weak and just can't swing the bat quickly, a lot of parents want to take their kids to pitching lessons and hitting lessons and things like that. And I've found over the years, the hitting coaches have good ideas. The pitching coaches have good ideas, the adjustments to make, but the kids physically can't make those adjustments. So they can't do what they're asking. You'd be better off going to a strength and conditioning coach, getting stronger, and then going to the pitching coach or the hitting coach. And then when they tell Johnny to do this or stride further or swing like this, they physically can actually do it.
The strongest athlete, the strongest player on the team is rarely the best player, but the most athletic player on the team is frequently the best player. And Eric Cressy has a great quote that I love to use often is, don't bring a mechanical solution to a physiological problem. And again, it goes back to my philosophy. You got to look at the player and see the athlete first. You may be telling the player, hey, you need to get your hips into that swing, okay? What if the player's hips are so tight that they can't get their hips into the swing? You've got a physiological problem, not a mechanical problem, okay? The mechanical problem is a manifestation of the physical problem. We talk about hip-shoulder separation in pitching, for example, thoracic mobility. You can't have hip-shoulder separation if the player doesn't have the thoracic mobility to achieve hip-shoulder separation. So again, you're going going about the wrong way. The kid can't do it because they don't have the thoracic ability to do it. And that's got to start in the dynamic movement routine. The same thing, fielding a ground ball. The kid is not, you're saying you got to get your feet, hips, and shoulders aligned to your target. If the kid is going left, say left side, and now has got to turn to throw to first base, and the front foot is pointing out to right field to do it, he's not getting, well, you can't just tell a kid to get your hips around and get everything aligned in the throw. They have to be trained to do that athletically. And before they can be trained athletically, they have to have the physiology to be able to do it. They have to have hips that actually move, all right? They have to have feet that have been trained to move and that kind of thing. So again, you have to look at the player and see the athlete before you can really achieve the results that you want to achieve.
Better athleticism is more important than just raw strength. There's a book, a very well-known baseball strength and conditioning book. It's called Movement Over Maxes. Movement Over Maxes. That's the title of the book, by one of those reputable strength and conditioning coaches in the baseball world. It's about quality movement over just raw strength, like you were saying, Coach Sarancik.
Let me give a couple of resources real quick that maybe will fill in the gaps for us, Coach, if I can. To get an idea of what Coach is talking about here, everyone, go to overtimeathletes.com. Overtimeathletes.com. Chris Barnard does a great job. Just type in off-season training for baseball players, in-season training for baseball players, speed, agility, quickness for baseball players. He's got a ton of YouTube videos that will really give you an idea of the kind of training that baseball players should be doing to improve themselves from a strength and conditioning point of view. And what you don't want to do is sign up for the PE class in school and do what everybody else is doing on the whiteboard. That is something you should not do. So Chris Barnard is really great at describing that. And just coaching methodology when it comes to, I'm one that says throw well before you throw a lot, swing well before you swing a lot. So just be careful getting in quantity over quality. Make sure that you're actually progressing what you're doing and you're getting better every day. Just don't go out and take 1,000 cuts or field 1,000 ground balls. Again, you may be reinforcing a lot of bad habits. As I say in my books, a $400 aluminum bat disguises a lot of mechanical flaws. Just because you're hitting 500, 600 for your current team using an aluminum bat against mediocre competition doesn't mean when you face elite competition with a wood bat, you're going to be good. So make sure that you're practicing and progressing skills to get better and not just assuming based on your batting average or your ERA that you're doing what you need to do. Infield skills, Coach Lou Colon, C-O-L-O-N. Watch the way he teaches. He's got dozens and dozens of real short 3 to 5 minute videos. Watch the way that he coaches in the methodology from dry mechanics through game movement, the 6 steps of coaching methodology. Watch the way he teaches, and those would be some great off-season things to do. And it'll improve your in-season coaching and drills as well.
I know we're running short on time. Well, I'd like to wrap up with the one last question here. And why is it important, in your opinion, for coaches to start building their practice plan templates or revising their past practice plan templates well before the season? And how can coaches look to weave life lessons and other things into those practice plans?
Yeah, I think coaches, again, I use a 3-part development approach, person, athlete, player. And you need to have SMART goals relating to all 3 of those things. So what do I mean by SMART? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and trackable through time. So you got to look at your team and the age group that you're coaching, saying, how are we going to make these people better people? How are we going to make them better athletes? How are we going to make them better players and teammates? Where are we starting at with this group? This is why I'm so passionate about the last podcast you and I did about running a tryout. That's why I'm so passionate about coaches being involved in the tryouts, because this is where you learn about your team, where they're at in these different areas, get to know them, get to know how they're going to respond to your coaching. It gives you an idea, okay, this is where we're at, and we have to have goals, how we're going to progress in each of these areas. To do that as a group, as a coaching group, you've got to have some templates about, okay, how are we going to run the throwing and receiving progression? How are we going to run our hitting stations? We're not going to do it the week of practice or the week before practice, because when you start discussing these, you're going to find out you may have different ideas about how those things should be done. You're going to say, you know what, maybe we need to do some research. We need to go watch the high schoolers and talk to the high school coach. That our program is a feeder program for it. Figure out how they do it. We may need to get online and get some other resources about how better. We've got to get Coach Bo's programs. He's got tons of information out there about how to run a practice, how to do this and that. We need to study what Coach Bo has out there a little more carefully and adapt it to our practices. Important thing is, if you're going to be efficient and progress them, you can't waste a lot of time. And templates really help you to start at point A and progress them to point Z by the end of the season. You're constantly improving and modifying, but you're starting with a base outline and a base understanding of how you're going to run each of the phases of practice so that the coaches can be on the same page and make adjustments in a lot more efficient manner throughout the season. As far as teaching these things, I wrote a quote book because I think quotes are a great way of getting players to learn how to express themselves, how to think a little deeper about why they're out there learning life lessons within the game for beyond the game. So I've got takeaway quotes for champions for life. I think I use a quote about work ethic at the beginning of my practice plans, something about overcoming adversity and those kind of things in the middle of practice, and then how to be a better person for a quote at the end of the practice plan. Practice plans are posted with time limits. The players review them, they memorize the quotes, and throughout practice, we take a few minutes and talk about the quotes. Acronyms, I mentioned FORD, Family, Obligation, Recreation, Dreams. I teach them acronyms that help drive home the point that we're out here to teach life lessons within the game for beyond the game. Guest speakers who come and talk about how sports impacted their lives, how they use what they learned in baseball to make them a better son, a better brother, better student, in other areas of their lives. So guest speakers are a great way of adding some depth and meaning to your program. These are just some of the things you can do to kind of help mentor your players to be better people, better athletes, and better players. Bottom line, coach, just to end here, we coach people, not sports. It's the quality of the person, not the player, that's the most significant outcome. We have to always keep that in mind. Yeah, when we're establishing our goals and establishing our templates, let's don't just do them for throwing, fielding, and hitting a baseball. Let's also do them for helping these people or these players become better people and better athletes as well.
Awesome. I think that's a good spot to wrap it up right there. We covered a lot today. I think the listeners are going to get a ton out of this. Coach Sarancik, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. As always, look forward to doing it again. As often as you want to have me, I will be here. And I just can't thank you enough for the passion that you bring to coaching and what you're doing for all the coaches out there that listen to your podcast. They get a ton of great information out of it. I know they're better coaches for it, and their players are better for having them invest so much in what they're doing.
I love the synergy that you and I have. I got your book right here, The Car Ride Home. I'm holding it. Love it. Highly recommend listeners get that. What's the best way, the easiest way to get your resources?
So all my articles, I publish a new article every month on coachingchampionsforlife.com. My 5 books are listed there. They can order the books through Amazon. They're all on Amazon as well. I have articles also published frequently, as you said, in the Inside Pitch magazine of the ABCA, as well as coachesinsider.com. So thank you for allowing me to get that. It's not about making money. I don't make much money about any of this. It's about sharing my philosophy at my age and stage and getting the information out to coaches to help them be better at what they do and to reward them for all the time and effort they're investing in coaching.
Thank you for giving back. And listeners, don't let this stuff pass you by. This wisdom that Coach Sarancik's put out there in the form of books, on his website, his articles. Definitely take advantage of all that. All right, Coach Sarancik, we'll see you in the next episode, the next time we get together.
Thanks, Coach. You take care.
All right, that wraps up part 2 of 2 with our interview with Coach Adam Sarancik. Next week, I'm going to share a recommendation with you for an app that can save you a ton of time, keep you organized, and be very useful as a coach, a parent, or pretty much anywhere in life. I actually built out my own version of this app, though I'm going to recommend an app that I'm not affiliated with, where I got the inspiration from, and you can find it on the App Store. The one I have, I just built for my devices, and the reason I haven't put it out there yet is because, as of this recording, I am launching the second 80/20 baseball app called Hitter Score. There's Pitcher Score, and now there's Hitter Score. Pitcher Score just got updated. In fact, got a brand new intro video to that. And these are 2 one-of-a-kind apps. The Pitcher Score has dynamic scoring for accuracy. Most accuracy is just balls and strikes. That barely tells even half the story about accuracy. Accuracy is much more dynamic. And hitting the same location, 0-2 versus 3-0, not the same. When you get to a certain level, even in youth baseball, a certain level where pitchers should be able to control their pitches, an 0-2 pitch down the middle, when it was intended to be on the outside corner or a little off the plate, yeah, it's a strike. It improves the strike percentage of the pitcher, but it's not a good pitch. But 3-0, throwing it down the middle, of course, is a good location. Accuracy is dynamic. Not all strikes are the same, and not all balls are the same. And that's what this app does. You can use it to gamify pitching accuracy. You can use it for your own kid to improve focus and gamify that growth throughout the season and get a precise score, accuracy score. And the other thing Pitcher Score is great for, coaches, coaches, you're gamifying bullpen sessions with simple taps on the phone. It does all the math and gives you the points. It gives you the leaderboard. It gives you the ranking. So you can gamify it, put a lot of time into it, and you can get that on the iOS App Store, the Apple App Store. And Hitter Score scores all the important stuff that you can't find on Game Changer on a scoring app. On Game Changer, you can see if they hit a line drive, and there are a lot of apps now that show spray charts and where the ball was hit. It shows the count. But the 4 things that it doesn't have on there that are key essentials to the hitting process. We talked about this a few months back in the 5 phases of hitting series. Pitch selection, timing, swing intensity. Was the hitter overswinging? Were they underswinging? Or were they swinging just right based on the count and the pitch? And did they take a breath before the pitch? The controllables. This allows parents and coaches to track what makes great hitters great when it comes to their process. Did they take a breath before each pitch? Were they on time? Did they swing at the right pitch? Was their swing decision correct? Swinging at the right pitches and taking the right pitches. And 4, swing intensity. A lot of players overswing with 2 strikes. There's also players that underswing. So the 80/20 Baseball Hitter Score app makes it so easy for parents, players, coaches to track these 4 key essentials to great hitting that don't show up on Game Changer or all the other scoring apps. It's the other part of hitting. So 2 great apps, put a lot of time and effort into these apps, actually years in developing the thought process, the design, and the elements behind it. Pumped to get those out. I think the apps turned out really great. The UI, the user interface, the user experience, big deals to me. You buy them once, you get them forever. There's no subscription, things like that. You can get those right away on the Apple App Store. Highly recommend. To me, these are no-brainers. You can have access to those in a minute. So speaking of 2 great apps, I'll share another app recommendation that I don't have an affiliation with, but I use daily. And when I'm coaching, doing training, I use it a lot. It's great for during games. In fact, I like it so much, I built my own version. The reason I did that is because the one version that's out there, I'm not affiliated with. It is a subscription thing, but it's worth checking out, and it may be worth it for a lot of you. Now, I'm not a big fan of the subscription-based apps. Now, the 80/20 Baseball apps are buy once, get it forever, but I understand there's a time and place for these subscription apps because they're using back-end stuff that they got to pay for, the app developer has to pay for, which is why I run it on my own phone and Apple Watch. All right, always great being here with all of you. Y'all take care. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Podcast, the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. We got this. Now, let's take the field.